Welcome to the Huddle, presented by OddsChecker. It's week 18, so we're just going to give the people, you, the people, what they want. The picks. This is Pick'em, brought to you by Mayo Premium. And don't forget to head over to OddsChecker.com and sign up for your very own MyOC Premium account for less than just $1 a day. You'll have access to our gambling experts, exclusive picks for NFL, MLB, college sports, NHL, UFC, NBA, golf, and so much more. I'm Pat Mayo, joined as always by Brian Matthews, Ross Tucker, and Pam Maldonado, as we are going to go snake draft style, giving the picks for week 18. And we went 4-2 last week, so the team was generous enough. They thought, you know what, we don't need to brag with our 4-2 record. Let's let Pat make 2 picks this week to really drag down what our record is going to be. So I'm going to start things off. Initially, I wanted to take the Chargers at -3 at Denver, because who wouldn't want to take anyone -3 against the Broncos at this point? However, we found out that Ravens and Bengals is going to be an early afternoon game, where that is a late afternoon game. If the Bengals beat the Ravens, then the Chargers legitimately have nothing to play for. Therefore, don't love the -3 so much. But the Ravens win, hammer that -3. But that's not going to be my pick. My pick is, I was thinking about the Giants at +14 against, maybe the Eagles aren't that good. But no, I'm going to stick to one of the key factors that needs to happen if Green Bay actually, or Detroit. We want to make the Sunday Nighter as fun as possible. So that means the Seahawks have to lose. And I think that we're being clouded a little bit on the Seahawks' performance from last week against the Jets, who had an anemic offense. I think Mike White might have 10 broken ribs at this point. Every time anyone sniffed near him, he threw the ball away immediately. And it actually made Seattle's defense look pretty good. Newsflash, though, they're not very good. And since Baker Mayfield took over for the Rams with Sean McVay, their offense has been competent. What they're going to be able to do is use Cam Akers, jam it down the Seahawks' throat, and give themselves a chance to win this game near the end. I have it capped as a 3-point game. The game is going off at 6.5 right now for the Seahawks, so I love the Rams at +6.5 in this matchup. Pam, that's my pick. Probably a loser. What are you going to give us for a winning pick?
I'm going to close out week 18 with more NFL totals, so I'm going to take the Texans and the Colts under 38. It's very difficult to handicap motivation in any sport, but the Texans should be motivated to not win this game, which could result in a low-scoring game. A loss is going to lock up the number 1 draft pick, and the Colts have been eliminated from playoff contention, so you have 2 teams who are kind of playing for a lot of nothing. Houston has averaged 11 points in its last 2 games. The Colts have been an absolute train wreck, switching quarterbacks from Matt Ryan to Nick Foles, who's now broken. Both the Colts and the Texans, they're bottom 4 in the league in total offense. Where are the points coming from here? Foles is going to be out this week because he got injured, but of course he did. So now you have Sam Ehlinger. Hook 'em horns, next man up. But man, I got to say it, Ehlinger, he has only 1 touchdown, 1 interception, a QBR of 34. It is not pretty. The Colts offense is still going to be lackluster. The Texans should not want to win in order to lock up that number 1 draft. Give me the under, no points, under 38.
Under 38. Brian, we're going to you next, but as you like to say, it's not fun. Life's too short to bet unders.
That's right. So look, I'm going to go Dallas -4 here. I think with Philly's loss last week, they're still playing, as if, hey, look, if Philly loses this weekend, it looks like the Giants are, they're saying they're going to do what's best for their team, right? And so it sounds like they're going to, rest some of their main guys, but there's still a chance that they can, they can take that number 1 spot. So as long as there's a chance there, I like them at -4 here against Washington. Seeing Ron Rivera in the post-game press conference say that he didn't know that they could be eliminated last week, and he didn't say that, more paraphrasing, but seeing his reaction was kind of staggering. And now they make the switch back to Heineke, who was the one that got them there in the first place after going to Wentz, after Heineke played the league's number 1 defense in San Francisco. So I would be surprised if he hasn't lost that locker room maybe a little bit with that decision, because Heineke had been not so good, but the team had played better, with him at quarterback. So that's going to be my first pick.
Ross, is that a fireable offense for Ron Rivera? Like, do we see him next year?
Which one? Not knowing that they could be eliminated after the game against the Browns, or starting Wentz over Heineke? I don't think not knowing they could be eliminated is a fireable offense. That really didn't even bother me that much, to be honest with you. I mean, that was not a consideration or something he needed to be aware of until they lost to the Browns like they did. All the focus should be going into trying to beat the Browns. That part of it didn't bother me. Starting Carson Wentz bothered me a lot. A lot, Pat. I don't understand why he did that. I don't think it made any sense. You know, we've seen that movie a lot, and it doesn't really go very well, especially late season. The Colts are way too familiar with that from a year ago. I thought the move was you start Heineke. If Heineke struggles, then maybe you have Wentz come off the bench. I was surprised he did it. I don't think he'll be fired just because I don't even know who the owner of the Commander is going to be this offseason. Plus, Rivera's kind of given them some stability and got them in the mix. But it was a really bad decision, that's for sure.
Where are you going with your 2 picks this week?
Let's start Saturday night. Titans, Jags. Look, nobody really wants to bet on the Titans anymore. I know. They're a tough watch. But I got news for you. Vrabel is a stud coach. And 6.5 points? 6.5 points for the Titans, who, by the way, just rested everybody. Jeffrey Simmons and Derrick Henry. None of them played against the Cowboys last Thursday night. They're all fresh, ready, gearing up for Saturday night. And now the Jags have a short week. They played the Texans Sunday. Then they turn around and find out they have to play the Titans Saturday night. Mike Vrabel will have those guys ready to roll. They're going to try to run Derrick Henry down the Jags' throat. This is what the Titans do. They play in close games. They muddy and grimy and dirty the game up. And somehow, a lot of times, even find a way to win. Been a while since they've actually done that. I don't think they'll actually win the game, but I do think they will keep it close and compelling and ride their fresh team against the Jaguars on Saturday. And I think, is this the first NFL game you're going to, Pam, or just NFL game you're going to?
It's my first Jags game that I'm going to in Jacksonville, so I'm super excited. So don't ruin it for me, Ross.
I won't. Hopefully for you, the Jags win by 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Any more than that, that's not good for my pick. My other pick, I'm going with a former Titan. How about this? I'm all in on the Titans this week. One more thing I should mention, by the way, about the Titans and the Jags. Josh Dobbs is way better than Malik Willis. He played well against the Cowboys. Josh Dobbs, there were drops by Robert Woods, by Treylon Burks. Josh Dobbs played pretty darn well. I expect he'll play even better. Yet another reason I like the Titans plus 6.5. Their former offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, is now the head coach in Atlanta. That's my other pick I loved. If you would have told me our first episode this year that I would be taking the Falcons in a situation where they are laying 4 points against the Bucs, I would have told you that you were absolutely nuts. I don't believe or think anybody believes the Bucs are going to play their guys. I don't care what Todd Bowles says. If I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. I'm like the dad in Dirty Dancing. I'll say I'm wrong if I'm wrong. But I don't believe that's the case. Meanwhile, Atlanta, Arthur Smith wants to get one more win. He's already surprised all of us with how many games, other than Pat Mayo, with how many games they've won this year. He wants to get one more. They're all rookies. They don't know any better. It's Drake London and Algier and Desmond Ridder. I like the Falcons to win the game. They're giving up 4. I think they win by at least 4.
I want to throw this back at you for a second, because last week on this show, I brought up that would it make sense if Tennessee just signed random people and started them at quarterback rather than Malik Willis? And that's what they did.
I don't know that Josh Dobbs is a random person, but your point is well taken, Pat. Yeah. Very well taken. Josh Dobbs played well, man. I was happy for him.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Like, I'm with you. I mean, if you hadn't laid dibs on the Tennessee plus 6.5, I would have been there right with you. What about you, Brian? Do you like Tennessee plus 6.5 too?
I actually love the pick. Look, Mike Vrabel's a great coach. Like you said, look, you've got some of your key guys rested up. Jacksonville's new to this, and Tennessee's going to come out there, play smash mouth football. They don't lose or win by too much. I don't see them getting blown out at all, especially with what's at stake here.
Trevor Lawrence is going to destroy the Tennessee secondary. Let's go, Jags.
I'm going to say, we can like Tennessee all we want. Pam's going to be there with a voodoo doll of Mike Vrabel in his hands, and it's not going to work out well for us. Brian, who is your second pick?
All right, so I'm finally doing the unthinkable. I'm going to fade the Browns here. I've tried to get it right twice this year, and I've got it wrong with my team. So I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go Steelers minus 2.5 here. Look, I think the Browns shockingly made it a close game last week with Carson Wentz throwing vertical passes straight to the defense. And look, Pittsburgh on defense, they always play the Browns tough. I just think this is a game where, hey, we're eliminated. I think they're going to come in hungry. They've been, playing a little bit better. We saw what they looked like last week. Najee Harris looked a lot better. The Browns have a very difficult time stopping the run. And I expect that to be the case here. So I'll go Pittsburgh minus 2.5 to close out the year and see if I can get right by jumping on the other side.
So Dallas and Pittsburgh as favorites for Brian. Pam, you went under in Colts Texans as your first pick. What are you doing with your second pick?
Under again, 38.5, but this time between the Jets and the Dolphins. Now, the Jets have already been eliminated from the playoffs, and the Dolphins don't have Tua Tagovailoa, but they still have a shot at the postseason here if they win and plus the Patriots loss. The Jets still have a good defense, and I feel like the Jets fans just really were hoping that Mike White would be this new quarterback that's going to take them into the postseason and be great things. But there was a really low bar set when you had Zach Wilson as quarterback. And we saw it come to fruition. It could be all of the injuries that Mike White has, but he had 0 touchdown passes. He threw 2 interceptions. The Miami team, because they still have playoff hopes, they're playing at home, where traditionally they are a better defensive team when playing in their home stadium. Their secondary is absolutely vulnerable, but I am not at all concerned with the offense because without Tua, you are instead playing Skylar Thompson, Teddy Bridgewater, who are serviceable backup quarterbacks, but between the two, they had thrown 2 interceptions last week against what's still a really good Jets defense. So I'm not impressed with the Jets offense. Neither of these offenses are going to be lighting up the scoreboard. The focus here is going to be on the defense for the Dolphins. They need the win, absolutely. So I'll take the under on 38.5.
I mean, we may get some Mike Glennon in this game, who the Dolphins just signed, if Skylar Thompson does not really come out on hot. The one thing about these unders is you got 4 really crappy quarterbacks. Don't forget that they can throw pick sixes too.
Yeah, and if they do, look at the live line and bet the under because that total's going to skyrocket if that does happen.
I like that. So my final pick for Week 18. I'm going to go with another underdog, in-division underdog on the road, and maybe I'm walking in. I walked into a big trap last week with the Eagles against these New Orleans Saints, but I actually thought the Panthers played pretty well against the Bucs. It's just the Bucs actually decided to try outside of the final 2 minutes of a game for once. Turns out they're actually okay when it comes down to it, but that offense still looked really good with Sam Darnold. It's absolutely mind-boggling that he is playing as well as he is. They're not sitting anyone. Steve Wilkes is coaching for a job, whether it be with the Panthers or someone who has an opening, probably Washington, as we heard out earlier, or maybe they go with a bigger name. Who knows what they do? But 3.5 points is the key here in New Orleans. It's not like New Orleans offense was amazing against Philadelphia last week. Yeah. The defense for the Panthers has been up and down, but overall it's been pretty solid. They've been generating pressure. And yes, the Saints do have back their entire defensive core. If this was their defense all year long, they'd be much better than they currently sit with their record today out of the playoffs. But I'm really a believer in this Sam Darnold Carolina offense, at least till the end of the year of how it's working out. So I think getting 3 into hook on the road in division feels like a field goal game. And I think the Panthers can win this one outright. So I will be taking the Panthers plus 3.5 as my final selection of Week 18. But we are not done as of yet because Mr. Ross Tucker was 3-0 on his teaser picks last week. So we need one more edition of Tuck's Teasers.
All right, Pat, I am ready. I will say this. This is very important to note. These lines change a little bit, right? So it's really important. I think if you've been paying attention every week, really important that you get the line where you can go through the 3 and the 7. They're called Wong teasers. It's not the same unless you go through the 3 and the 7. So the ones I like right now, you can take the Minnesota Vikings from -7.5 down to -1.5 against Nathan Peterman and the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields is not playing in this game. I know that the Vikings theoretically don't have that much to play for. It's unlikely that the Niners are able to lose to the Cardinals. So the Vikings are probably locked into the 3 seed. By the way, truth be told, they're probably happy about that, being locked into the 3 seed and playing the Giants in the first round as opposed to being the 2 seed and maybe playing the Packers or even the Lions would be my guess. At any rate, they're going to win the game, I believe, because I think they're going to play their guys. And Nathan Peterman, again, if you weren't hearing me 30 seconds ago, is starting at quarterback for the Bears. I also like, this one's a little bit tougher. So anyway, you're taking the Vikings from -7.5 down to -1.5. Then you're taking the Houston Texans from +2.5 up to +8.5. So 2 thoughts here. On the one hand, I know that they don't want to win the game because they probably want the number 1 overall pick. They're playing the Colts. First of all, the Colts are starting Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. Sorry, Pam, but we know how that has gone so far this year when he has played. Secondly, I think it's going to be a close game anyway, but what if Lovie Smith doesn't get the code red? Or what if Lovie Smith gets the code red and realizes, you know what? I'm getting fired anyway. Let's go win the game. Let's get and win the game. They're going to fire me anyway. What do I care? Let's win the game, and the Texans don't get the number 1 pick. Either way, take the Texans up to 8.5. I do think they'll play better than last week, one way or the other, and it'll be a close game. Last but not least, you can take the Cowboys from -7.5 to -1.5. The Commanders are starting Sam Howell. Maybe Sam plays pretty well. It's his first start as a rookie. Doesn't seem all that likely, number 1. Number 2, Cowboys still could win the NFC East. Theoretically, the Cowboys still could be the number 1 seed if the Niners and Eagles both lose. Don't see either one of those happening. But I do believe that the Cowboys, at least for the first half, have to play their guys to try to get that lead, to try to make sure they have a chance to get that NFC East championship. So take the Cowboys from -7.5 down to -1.5 against the Commanders. 3 teaser legs for you right there. Who knows if more unfold over the next day or 2 based on lines moving.
I really hope Lovie Smith coaches like he's going to be fired in the Texans. As someone with a gigantic Bears to have the worst record bet, I would love that to no end. It seemed dead 5 weeks ago, but here we are with a chance in the final week of the season for it to come through. Who would have thought? Not me. I'll tell you that much right now. But hey, I thought it 18 weeks ago. Didn't quite think it 5 weeks ago, but now I'm back. Now that they've built my hopes back up, the Texans are going to lose by like 100 points. So that's just how it's going to go for them. Anyway, that was the Week 18 edition of The Huddle. I want to thank all of you for coming in to watch. I want to thank Ross, Brian, and Pam. I'm Pat Mayo. We'll see you next week.